Hey guys, welcome back to the Spruce and Linen channel. I'm Janelle and today we're going to talk all about recycled cotton frizz ribbon. So let's get started. Hey! Yeah, you right there. Do you want to learn how to make this adorable woven pouch? Head over to spruceandlinen.com to check out our all new e-class. There's also a link in the description box below. Before we jump into my two favorite ways to use recycled cotton frizz ribbon in my weaving, I want to just talk a little bit about what it is. And to preface this, make sure you check out Unfettered Co., which all of these colors came from. She has a ton of beautiful colors. You can use code SPRUCEANDLINEN10 to get 10% off your order of $100 Canadian or more, or use SPRUCEANDLINEN20 to get 20% off your order of $200 or more Canadian. Each one of you is allowed to use each of those codes once. All right, so cotton frizz ribbon is one that I really love. I've carried it in my shop before. Depending on when you're watching this, I might still have some in my shop, so definitely check that out. And it's just a really great product. It's recycled, it's made out of ripped up cotton fabric, which is why it has such a frizz look to it, because it is torn. What I really like about this stuff is just like the really natural look of it. It can read very boho, or at least sort of shabby in a way, and I just really like it. And I like mixing it with other materials to sort of let it be its own texture, which is why the two stitches that I use it for are super basic stitches. Now, it usually comes in a skein like this, which is just a loop, and I'll open this up here. This is the same way that the recycled sari silk ribbon comes, and a skein is literally just a loop. So it comes in this big loop. If I can find the correct ends, there we go. It comes in this big loop, and then it's usually tied in at least one spot. So this one is tied right here. You untie it and you can put it on an umbrella swift. You can wrap it around a chair as you ball it up, and then I usually just ball it up by hand, so it ends up like this. Again, this is exactly like the sari silk ribbon, so I'll put a link here for that tutorial if you want to see this in more depth. One thing to note about things like sari silk ribbon and cotton frizz ribbon is that they are quite dusty. I'm literally like looking at the cotton dust in the air right now, and this is just because it is torn. It's not a finished edge, so the little fibers on the ribbon are just going to want to kind of get in the air. So just be aware of that you'll probably want to clean up a little more often. Be careful around your merino wool roving that it doesn't get too dusty on it, and that sort of thing. The two stitches that I like to use cotton frizz ribbon for are just simply plain weave and sumac stitch. And yes, you can play around with other stitches, but I feel that this kind of material really does a lot of the work for you. It already has so much texture and interest to it that you don't really have to do a lot to make it look cool. So I'm gonna start with the plain weave. Here's the plain weave, and hopefully you can see what I was talking about with it kind of doing a lot of the work for you. It's organic, it's not the exact same texture in every single spot. So you can see over here that the frizziness, there was a little less of that because it's probably in the back more so. And then over here, it's really frizzy. And I just love that. I love when you can get sort of that randomness that ends up looking really natural and really organic. Next up, we have sumac stitch, and I will talk a little bit about how I typically do sumac stitch with the cotton frizz ribbon. I like to use two strands at the same time, so a little bit different than how I normally use merino wool roving. And I'm gonna get a pretty big piece because sumac stitch does take up quite a bit of yarn at a time. I have a nice long piece of this cotton frizz ribbon, and then I folded it in half. I'm going to take the half that is a loop, and I'm gonna start with that. So I'm creating a loop, and then I'm going to bring the other end from right to left under the first two strings, pull all the rest through, leave a tail so that we can tuck it in later, and that's your first sumac stitch. Then I'm going to skip two strings and go to the next two and do the same thing. This is definitely a quicker way to do a sumac stitch when you're using something like yarn. It doesn't really work with merino, but it works great with these ribbons and with yarn. So once again, I'm skipping 2, going to the next 2, from right to left, going underneath, pulling the ends through, and then pulling everything to be a little bit tighter. Now that I'm at the end, this is how I like to turn around. I like to repeat what I just did. So I've gone around those 2 strings. I'm gonna go around those 2 strings again. I wanna stagger my rows, so I'm actually going to go to the next 2 strings, and now I'm working in the opposite direction. So I'm going from left to right under these 2 strings. And then pulling them down. I'm going to continue this same stitch for a few rows so you can get a feel for what the texture looks like. Just to give you a little example about the dust I was talking about, you can see up here, there's like little bits of dust. So just keep that in mind. I don't think it's a big deal at all. I just try to clean up a little bit more when I'm using this material. This is the sumac stitch. As you can see, it actually does not look at all like a sumac stitch, but what I like about it is it kind of gets the ribbons sticking out a little bit more to add to the texture, and it really just creates a whole different texture than the plain weave. Even though it doesn't really look like a sumac stitch, it's a really great way to provide this different texture and a depth to your piece. All right, you guys, so those are my 2 go-to ways to use cotton frizz ribbon in my weaving. Make sure you check out the selection of cotton frizz ribbon at Unfettered Co. and use my codes Spruce and Linen 10 and Spruce and Linen 20. More details in the description box below. If you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell to get notifications when I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.